Hey there. Tonight, allow the quiet to settle around you. We're venturing into the archives, turning the brittle pages of a forgotten file, one that holds not just a single tragedy, but a bewildering, unsettling sequel. You are the protagonist in this moment of deep calm. There is nothing left to do but listen, letting the measured rhythm of the past guide you toward rest. This is a deep, historical look at a case so complex, so saturated with irony, that its details were quietly shelved. A chapter of investigative history they never taught you in school. It showcases the specific dangers faced by those who pursue justice against cunning minds. We are revisiting a time and place where the line between hunter and hunted blurred entirely. So, dim the lights. Find your most comfortable position, letting every muscle soften. This story begins in the cool, isolated town of Oak Haven, Massachusetts in late 1957. Before we sink into the narrative, tell me in the comments where you are and the time right now. It is a peaceful connection we share across the miles. So, dim the lights and let the complex story of Detective Arthur Finch and the double-cross cold case unfold. The profound silence of Oak Haven, Massachusetts on November 14, 1957 was a deceptive veil. Inside the secluded stone estate of Dr. Elias Thorne, a prominent historian, Detective Arthur Finch felt the chilling weight of a crime meticulously orchestrated. Dr. Thorne was found, not violently, but in a state of unsettling repose, slumped over his desk, a rare first edition volume opened beside his hand. The scene was unnervingly tidy, a complete absence of the chaos one expects from a struggle. This initial paradox was the strongest emotional hook for the veteran detective, a silent scream of control that spoke louder than any broken furniture. Finch, a man whose patience was his greatest weapon, moved with deliberate slowness, his eyes, perpetually tired yet sharp, scanning the periphery for the tiny anomaly that would break the symmetry. The initial assumption of natural causes was shattered by the forensic team's discovery. A microscopic, purple discoloration on Dr. Thorne's inner wrist. This nearly invisible mark was the single thread leading through the labyrinth. The specific danger here was immediate and clear. The killing was not an impulsive act of passion, but the work of a highly intelligent professional utilizing a synthesized neurotoxin. This was a profound challenge to the local police force. Historically, cases involving poisons, especially those utilized with surgical precision, have a survival statistic for the killer, meaning they're to evade immediate detection, reaching a shocking 85% success rate. Finch knew they were hunting a shadow, a genius who traded in silence and lethal chemistry. The early police investigation focused intensely on Dr. Thorne's research, which led to the discovery of a pending manuscript. The manuscript detailed the Cold War-era activities of Dr. Alistair Rourke, an exiled chemist notorious for developing a rapid-acting neurotoxin, a poison almost chemically identical to the one used on Dr. Thorne. This specific historical figure, Rourke, instantly transformed the sleepy local murder into a high-stakes international manhunt. Finch, leaning against the cold stone of the fireplace, felt the pressure of The complex search for Dr. Alistair Rourke spanned 2 grueling weeks, relying on decades-old intelligence records and a single, critical, location-specific detail unearthed by Finch's determined team. A specific, non-toxic precursor compound, necessary for the final synthesis of the neurotoxin, had been sold in a small, out-of-the-way chemical supplier in Oakhaven just days before the murder. The seller remembered the buyer as a quiet, meticulous man, using the name Arthur Davis, and providing a rental lockbox address in Salem. This seemingly insignificant piece of administrative paper, an entry in a dusty, leather-bound ledger, was the killer's fundamental miscalculation. The investigation immediately shifted its focus to the Salem lockbox. Finch understood that Rourke, the scientific genius, operated with the flaw of believing in his own flawless execution. You can sense the immense relief, mixed with mounting tension, as the officers moved into Salem under the cover of a freezing night, their movements as slow and silent as the falling snow. The lockbox, when accessed, yielded a treasure trove of criminal planning, a detailed chemical blueprint for the final lethal synthesis, multiple false identification papers, and crucially, a one-way train ticket stub to Montreal dated for 7 a.m. the following morning. Rourke was not only planning to flee, but had also left behind a schematic for his customized weapon, a spring-loaded fountain pen that fired the poisoned microdart. This level of technical detail offered a terrifying insight into the killer's cold detachment and extensive preparations. The historical context of this weapon, small, easily concealed chemical delivery devices used by intelligence agencies, added a layer of darkness, a forgotten history they never taught you in school. Finch realized that Rourke's scientific background made the conventional approach to an arrest extremely dangerous. He was a man who saw the world in terms of lethal reactions and controlled outcomes. The team recognized the specific danger. Rourke would be armed with the means to kill instantly and silently. But planning for the train station apprehension had to be flawless, minimizing contact and exposure, a survival statistic that heavily favored the armed, trained officers. The apprehension of Dr. Alistair Rourke at the Montreal Express platform was executed with the chilling precision it required. Just moments before he boarded the train, 2 plainclothes federal agents, operating under Detective Finch's careful coordination, moved in. Rourke, despite his careful planning, reacted with a startled flicker, his hand instinctively moving toward his jacket pocket, likely where the lethal pen was concealed. However, the speed of the federal agents was overwhelming. Rourke was subdued, his lethal weapon secured without a single shot fired, concluding the initial police investigation and resulting in the arrest of the historian's killer. The tension released in the train station was palpable, a moment of deep, collective relief. Rourke was transferred to a maximum security holding facility awaiting trial for the murder of Dr. Thorne. Finch, sitting across from the captured chemist in the interrogation room, saw not a monster, but a man of immense intellect, warped by decades of paranoia and scientific detachment. Rourke remained cold, analytical, and completely unrepentant. During the subsequent 3 months of pre-trial proceedings, Rourke's confidence was unnerving. He often spoke of his own survival statistics, that the state would never convict a mind as keen as his, citing historical instances where scientific murderers walked free due to the complexity of the evidence. His arrogance was a constant, toxic presence in the courtroom. This level of hubris, Finch noted, was the specific danger inherent in geniuses. They believe they are above the human law. The only person Rourke seemed to tolerate was his new, highly specialized defense attorney, Ms. Evelyn Reed. Reed was a formidable, quiet woman, known for her methodical, almost surgical deconstruction of forensic evidence. Rourke, the unrepentant murderer, was secured, but the story was far from over. The quiet, relentless pursuit of justice had succeeded in the investigation, but the subsequent events would prove that fate had a shocking and ironic twist awaiting the master poisoner. The calm surrounding the justice system was about to be violently and inexplicably shattered, pushing Detective Finch back into a chilling new reality. You might want 3 months after his secure arrest, just weeks before the trial was set to begin, Dr. Alistair Rourke was found dead in his maximum security cell. The irony was immediate, chilling, and profound. The master poisoner had himself been poisoned. The murder of the murderer was an unthinkable escalation. The correctional facility was instantly transformed into a sterile, terrifying crime scene. Rourke's body displayed the exact same, almost invisible purple pinprick on his inner wrist that had marked his own victim, Dr. Thorne. The sheer audacity of the act, the method, identical to the original crime, sent a tremor of fear through the entire Justice Department. This was no common act of prison violence. This was a calculated, brilliant, and deeply personal execution. Detective Finch was immediately called back into the fold. The investigation into the second murder, the killing of the killer, was instantly more complex than the first. The specific dangers were multiplied. The killer had somehow bypassed maximum security protocols, used the exact same rare neurotoxin, and replicated the weapon's unique delivery system. The statistical probability of this being a coincidence was 0. Finch knew he was hunting not an imitator, but someone with direct, intimate access to the details of Rourke's crime. Someone driven by a motive so powerful, it overcame the fear of state security. The list of suspects was terrifyingly small, encompassing a select few: the forensic team, the federal agents who made the arrest, Finch himself, and Rourke's own defense attorney, Miss Evelyn Reed. This second act of violence suggested a form of vigilante justice, a history of personal retribution they never taught you in school. Finch, standing in the sterile jail corridor, felt a renewed, cold determination. He had caught one ghost. Now he had to find the second, more dangerous one. The person who held the key to Rourke's secrets. The survival statistics for the second killer, if they were truly an outsider, were shockingly low due to...
The investigation into Rourke's murder focused immediately on the narrow window of opportunity and the limited access points. The poison was the key. Dr. Alistair Rourke had been allowed one highly controlled weekly visit with his defense attorney, Miss Evelyn Reed. Beyond this, all his food, water, and materials were prepared by prison staff under strict supervision. Finch's attention was drawn to Miss Reed. Her professional demeanor was flawless, but Rourke had been entirely dependent on her for his notes and any non-prison issue materials. The method of killing was a brilliant, almost unthinkable replication of Rourke's original crime. The neurotoxin had been administered via the same microdart principle, but Finch theorized a different delivery system, an object Rourke was allowed to handle. Finch ordered the entire contents of Rourke's cell and personal effects to be meticulously re-examined. The only non-standard item Rourke possessed was a small, personalized wooden ink pen, a gift from Ms. Reed for signing legal documents, a gesture of confidence. The pen, when analyzed by Dr. Vance, held the secret. It was a perfect internal replication of Rourke's own microdart design, miniaturized and embedded within the cap. The activation mechanism was a subtle one, a slight rotation of the cap, creating a tiny, almost imperceptible expulsion of the poison dart when Rourke brought the pen to his wrist. a common habit when concentrating. The specific danger here was Ms. Reed's motive and deep knowledge of the original crime. This was an insider crime, a perfect piece of ironic, delayed justice. Ms. Reed, the defense attorney, was now the prime suspect for the second murder, the brilliant, silent executor of Rourke's own fatal design. The next step was to understand why. You can feel the story twisting violently, realizing that the person sworn to protect the first murderer was the one who delivered his punishment. This level of double-cross made the initial police investigation look like child's play. The location-specific detail of the jail cell and the visitor's room was now the epicenter of the new investigation. With the murder weapon, the custom-engineered pen, secured, the investigation shifted to the motive of Ms. Evelyn Reed. Why would a successful, highly regarded defense attorney murder her own client? The historical record of the original victim, Dr. Elias Thorne, provided the stunning answer. Thorne, the historian, had a daughter, a young woman named Clara, who had tragically passed away 3 years prior. Her death, initially ruled an accidental overdose, had devastated Thorne. Finch discovered through a forgotten local newspaper clipping that Clara Thorne had been studying at the same university where Dr. Alistair Rourke was years earlier, secretly operating under an assumed identity. Ms. Evelyn Reed was not Ms. Evelyn Reed at all. She was Clara Thorne's older sister, Evelyn, a fact she had meticulously concealed by altering public records and adopting a professional alias upon entering law school. This was the history of personal vengeance they never taught you in school. A sister's quiet, methodical dedication to an ultimate, delayed retribution. Evelyn Reed had spent 3 years of her life not merely studying law, but studying Rourke's original murder method, the neurotoxin, and the specific weaknesses in his criminal psychology. She became the one person Rourke trusted, the only one allowed to get close enough. The survival statistics for a killer who executes a vengeance plot with such cold-blooded planning are often alarmingly high, as their emotional drive fuels an incredible attention to detail. Evelyn, as his attorney, had access to every detail of Rourke's methods, allowing her to replicate the method of killing the murderer with ironic perfection. You can imagine the immense pressure Finch felt, realizing he was hunting not a hired killer, but a grieving sister who had sacrificed her entire life for this one moment of balanced justice. Finch needed to bring her in, but the specific dangers involved were clear. Evelyn was a woman who had demonstrated an absolute, almost terrifying control over her emotions, and a complete disregard for self-preservation once her goal was met. The police investigation had found the killer, but the final, high-stakes moment of confrontation remained. Detective Finch knew that a direct, aggressive approach to Evelyn Reed would be catastrophic. He understood her, a woman driven by a profound, years-long pursuit of poetic justice, not panic. The method of investigation finding the murderer, in this case, required psychology, not brute force. Finch decided on a non-confrontational interview, inviting Evelyn to his office under the guise of finalizing the Rourke file and discussing the security breach. When Evelyn arrived, impeccably dressed and composed, she found Finch's office quiet, the lights dimmed, with only the glow of his desk lamp illuminating the space, a scene designed to encourage calm and reflection. Finch did not immediately mention the poison pen or the link to her sister. Instead, he started by talking about the heavy, often overlooked emotional toll that cases of profound injustice take on everyone involved, especially family. You might find the slow, almost conversational pacing of the conversation unexpectedly calming. yet the underlying tension is almost unbearable. Finch spoke of Dr. Thorne, her father, and the quiet dignity with which he pursued the truth, only to be silenced. He spoke of the sister, Clara, a life lost to an earlier, unproven act of Rourke's scientific cruelty. He spoke of the inherent satisfaction in seeing a puzzle solved, a balance restored. He used no accusations, only narrative. He described the perfection of the second murder, the meticulous planning, the ironic use of Rourke's own method against him. Evelyn listened, her face unmoving, a statue of control. This patient approach, the refusal to rush the moment, was Finch's specific skill, a quiet danger to the guilty. The silence in the small office lengthened, thick and heavy. This prolonged silence was the weapon. Finch placed the murder weapon, the small, personalized wooden ink pen, gently on the desk between them. He simply nudged it toward her. This action, devoid of any verbal accusation, was the final, devastating piece of evidence. The silent presence of the pen on the desk was the key that finally unlocked Evelyn Reed's years of carefully controlled grief and vengeance. The dam of her composure broke not in a torrent of hysterics, but in a quiet, profound sigh. A sound of final, complete exhaustion. You might find the silence that followed more powerful than any confession. Evelyn reached out and gently picked up the wooden pen, examining the familiar, deadly object with a detached reverence. She began to speak, whispering her voice low and measured, recounting her journey not as a killer, but as a daughter and a sister, seeking an unattainable balance. She detailed her years of planning, adopting the new identity, the painful study of law, and the chilling immersion into Rourke's own research and criminal methodology. This deep dive into her psychology showed Finch that the method of killing the murderer was not just retaliation, but a meticulous, educational exercise in justice, a history lesson for Rourke himself. She confirmed the identical nature of the microdart and the neurotoxin, explaining that she synthesized it from precursor materials Rourke had kept secreted away, a fact she discovered in his original, seized legal documents. Evelyn explained that her objective was not to escape justice, but to deliver it. She fully understood the legal consequences of the second murder and had accepted them years ago. Her composure never wavered, even as she confirmed the final, subtle twist. During her last pre-trial visit, she had instructed Rourke to sign a final, complex document, advising him to concentrate and review the language carefully, a moment when he habitually brought his pen to his wrist, making him the unwitting executioner of his own sentence. This level of meticulous, cold-blooded planning was the final, devastating piece of evidence in the investigation. The survival statistics for a criminal like Evelyn, who had completed her life's purpose, were irrelevant. She had chosen her fate. Finch quietly stood and placed his hand on the arrest papers. Evelyn placed the pen back on the desk. The silence returned. Now, the formal arrest of Evelyn Reed for the murder of Dr. Alistair Rourke was conducted with the same quiet dignity that marked the end of her vengeance. She offered no resistance, viewing her confinement not as punishment, but as the final, necessary chapter of her life's work. The sheer complexity and emotional depth of the case, a double homicide linked by fate and chemistry, became a hushed,
closely guarded secret within the police and judicial ranks. The method of investigation finding the murderer, the patient, psychological approach of Detective Finch was a testament to the fact that not all crimes are solved by shattered glass and fingerprints. This particular history of self-made justice was deemed too dangerous for the public, an educational lesson in retribution that they never taught you in school. The subsequent trial of Evelyn Reed was one of the quietest in the region's history. The state chose to pursue the case not as a standard murder, but as a case of premeditated manslaughter, acknowledging the unusual circumstances and the original victim's identity. The jury, faced with the overwhelming details of Rourke's scientific cruelty and Evelyn's calculated grief, returned a verdict that surprised few. Guilty, but with a recommendation for maximum leniency. Evelyn was sentenced to a short term, a duration that acknowledged the crime while simultaneously recognizing the profound weight of her loss. You might feel a strange sense of quiet satisfaction, a feeling that a profound imbalance, though corrected illegally, was ultimately rectified. Detective Finch watched the proceedings with a detached, professional air. He had fulfilled his duty twice over, bringing both the original killer and the vengeful executor to justice, using the simple, unwavering tool of forensic truth. The case of the double-cross cold case became a footnote in the internal archives, a case study in specific dangers and human psychology, where the killer's weapon became the method of their own ultimate demise. The relentless focus on detail and patience had allowed him to close The story of the double-cross cold case eventually faded into the deep, quiet archives of Oakhaven's history, known only to a handful of police veterans and court officials. Detective Arthur Finch, having closed the book on two chillingly similar murders, found a renewed sense of peace in the predictable rhythm of his small-town life. He often reflected on the profound irony of the case, that the sophisticated method of the first murder was the precise tool that enabled the second. A perfect piece of symmetrical justice, executed by a grieving daughter. The survival statistics of Rourke, the scientific genius, were ultimately zero. A powerful testament to the fact that even the most meticulous planning can be undone by the simplest of human emotions: love and loss. The quiet complexity of this case offers a final lesson, that the true work of police investigation is not in the flash of action, but in the patience to observe the invisible threads of motive and history. The specific dangers faced by Finch were not physical threats, but the intellectual and psychological challenge of facing minds sharper and more wounded than his own. You might carry a final, calming thought into the night, that sometimes the most profound acts of justice are the ones that occur in the quiet spaces, driven by a deep, enduring love. The case of Dr. Thorne and his daughter, Evelyn, became a silent cautionary tale in Finch's mind, a reminder that a killer's own arrogance is often the method of investigation, finding the murderer. The truth, no matter how complex or buried in history, always finds its way to the surface, emerging slowly, quietly, under the watchful eye of a patient investigator. Let this intricate tale of pursuit and consequence allow your mind to slow. your thoughts to soften. The archives are now closed. And so, the files on the double-cross cold case are finally sealed, archived in the quiet darkness of history. We leave behind Detective Finch, a man who understood that patience is the ultimate tool of justice. You have journeyed through a labyrinth of scientific cunning and human emotion, witnessing a rare instance where vengeance became its own complex form of justice. The specific dangers of that era, the hidden histories of chemical warfare and the survival statistics of brilliant criminals, are now safely confined to the past. You can allow your mind to let go of these complexities. Remember the feeling of the quiet in Oakhaven, the stillness in the archives, and the slow, deliberate pace of the investigation. There is nothing left to solve tonight. Every thread is tied, every truth uncovered. Let the final images of the quiet town, the closed file, and the fading fog drift away from your thoughts now. You are safe, you are warm, and you are secure in this moment. Thank you for listening tonight. It's time to let the quiet settle in completely. Go now and rest peacefully.